Hey guys, Bartell's Bookshelf here. I'm going to be doing a book haul video today because I went to a library book sale today and I got 21 books here, all super cheap. It all only cost me about $18.50. So yeah, should be interesting. Let's go. So the first book that I got is some Anne Rice stuff. I have her book written under the pseudonym of Anne Rampling, Exit to Eden. This is different from her Vampire Chronicles stuff. There's no like supernatural stuff. It's more sort of a dark erotica, I guess you'd say. It's about this like sex club and like all this like kinky shit happens. I don't know much about it. I know they made a movie of it in the 90s that had like nothing to do with the book. What's new? But yeah, it looked interesting. I've always wanted to read Anne Rice's other non-vampire related stuff, so there you go, there's that. And I also got her book, The Witching Hour, which is the first book in her Lives of the Mayfair Witches trilogy. I know that eventually, I believe this does cross over with the Vampire Chronicles, but I don't know to what extent. I haven't read any of that. But again, it was cheap and should be interesting. It's a chonker. It is 1,038 pages, so if I like it, you know, that'll keep me going for a while. Next, I have Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is a sort of modern, would you call this a modern Gothic? Yeah, because I guess Gothic novels were in the 1800s. This is a modern Gothic classic from the 1930s. Very florid style, from what I've heard. Very influential. Hitchcock made a movie adaptation of it in 1940. I had a copy from the library that I was going to read, but I figured why not just buy it, you know? And if I like it, then I've got a copy I can hang on to. And for what I assume to be a library copy, it's really nice quality. The pages are all nice and clean, and yeah. So looking forward to reading that one eventually. Next, I have Bitten by Kelley Armstrong. This is an urban fantasy novel. It's her first book in the Women of the Otherworld series, I believe. I used to have a copy of this a long time ago, but I wasn't really into it at the time, but I was like 12 back then, so that doesn't really mean anything. It's about like this woman named Elena who's like the last female werewolf or something like that. I don't know, we'll see how it is. As I've said before, I'm not normally into like urban fantasy stuff, but I like werewolves, and this book has been all over the place. It was made into a TV series a couple years ago, so I'm curious, you know. If it's werewolf related, I'm gonna read it, so. Next, I've got some vintage sci-fi here. This is the Cyberiad stories by Stanislaw. Well, the Cyberiad, and I guess it's also stories, or is it? Yeah, Fables for the Cybernetic Age. So yeah, this is the Cyberiad by Stanislaw Lem. Stanislaw Lem was a very famous Polish science fiction writer. He wrote stuff like Solaris, the Futurological Congress, a few other things like that. I've never actually read any of his stuff, but of course I ran across this at the sale, and I just, you know, I had to give it a shot. It was only $1, so I'm looking forward to that. Apparently, yeah, it's a collection of science fiction stories, so I'll be interested to see how that is. I've never read any Stanislaw Lem before, so. In the similar vein, another short story collection here. This is Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. This was a finalist for the National Book Award. It's a collection of surreal and sort of creepy short stories. Never read it. I read Carmen Maria Machado's memoir, In the Dream House, which I really enjoyed, so I'm eager to get to this, especially because it's been getting a lot of great press in the last few years, so we'll see what that's like. Next, I have Water for Elephants by Sara Gruen. I was always sort of lukewarm on this because this just seemed like one of those, you know, bestseller type books that was just all over airports. You know, everyone's mom was reading this, but yeah, and they made a movie out of it with Robert Pattinson, so I was always kind of, I never thought I was that interested in it, but again, it was cheap at this library sale, and it takes place in a traveling carnival. So, I mean, I love that sort of stuff. And anything involving like carnivals or circuses or sideshows or anything like that, I'm all over that. So, I'll be curious to see how it is. I don't really have high expectations, but maybe I'll be surprised. I hope I am surprised. I like being pleasantly surprised, so we'll see how that turns out. And here I've got I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. Would you believe I've never actually read this? I've seen a few of the movies, and I know kind of the basic plot and everything, but I've never read the actual book. I used to have a copy of it a long time ago, but I never read it, and I sold it, unfortunately. I sold a bunch of my books when I was younger, and this is one of them. But yeah, it's supposed to be a horror sci-fi classic. I've always been meaning to read it, and I never have, so why not, you know? The only thing I don't like is this has this stupid tie-in thing, now a major motion picture starring Will Smith, which is kind of annoying, but whatever. If I like the book, then I can just find another copy that doesn't have that, so... this is Tales from the Arabian Nights. Tales from the Arabian Nights, translated by Richard Francis Burton. This isn't the full Arabian Nights. The full Arabian Nights is like 3 volumes. It's gigantic. But these are selections of the most famous stories from the Richard Burton translation, which was very, very famous and very influential. Eventually, I would like to buy... there's a 3-volume Penguin edition of the complete Arabian Nights that was translated, I believe, in 2008. And I would love to have that. But I figure... you know, this translation is so influential and these stories are so famous that it would be nice to just kind of have like an overview or a primer, I guess, which is sort of how I'm looking at this. So I'll be very interested to see how that is and, you know, comparing it to the Penguin edition whenever I read that. So, yeah, seems interesting. And this was only $2 too, so. Next I've got Spindle's End by Robin McKinley. This is a sort of retelling of Sleeping Beauty. Robin McKinley is sort of known for writing sort of retellings of fairy tales. I've read her book Beauty, which is her retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and I really enjoyed that. I've got a couple other of her books. I think I've got Deerskin, and I've got The Outlaws of Sherwood, so I'll be really interested to dig more into her stuff. Anybody who knows me knows that I love anything involving like fairy tale retellings, mythology, folklore, that kind of thing, especially if it's done in a very lush, poetic style, which from reading her other stuff, I know that this will be, so I'll be very interested to get to that eventually. I have 2 books here by Caroline B. Cooney. These are YA thrillers, The Face on the Milk Carton and What Janie Found. I believe these are part of a series, but I'm not sure what order they go in. But it's about a girl named Janie Johnson, and there's like these 2 families, and people go missing. There's like all kinds, and the first book sounds really interesting. The Face on the Milk Carton. It's about this girl Janie who sees her own picture on a milk carton as a missing person, and she has to figure out kind of like what that means. So that sounds really interesting. I'll figure out what order these all go in when I read them. So, but yeah, those look and sound really cool and interesting and spooky. You know, I've heard a lot about Caroline B. Cooney because she wrote a lot of stuff for the Point horror series back in the day. So yeah, I'll be interested to check those out. I have the first 2 Anne of Green Gables books here by L.M. Montgomery, Anne of Green Gables and Anne of Avonlea. Again, these are supposed to be, you know, children's book classics. I've never read them. I kind of know the basic story, but the children's books at this book sale were 50 cents each. So, I mean, look at these covers. Isn't that awesome? There's these beautiful painted covers, and they're put out by Tor. I didn't know Tor put out, like, old classic, like, children's books and stuff, but they're really cool, and they're really nice condition and everything, so... I wouldn't normally like pick up these kinds of things, but for how cheap they were and for how nice these editions are, I figured why not. I have no idea what they're like, but I have a couple friends who are really, really into L.M. Montgomery. So, in fact, one of my friends, actually, I'll link in the description, Cheryl Mahoney, she has a huge collection of L.M. Montgomery stuff. She's like one of her favorite writers, so I'll be interested to see what those are like. Another children's book here, The Thief and the Beanstalk by P.W. Catenaes. Catanese, I don't know how you pronounce that, sorry. This is sort of a retelling, or not a retelling, but sort of a continuation of Jack and the Beanstalk, where it's about Jack and the Beanstalk, after, you know, what happened after, you know, Jack became an adult, and it's about this this thief named Nick who you know decides to steal Jack's riches and climb the beanstalk and everything. As I said before, I love anything involving like fairy tale retellings or continuations or interpretations or whatever. And, you know, it sounded interesting, and I mostly just got it for that cover art. I mean, check that out. Isn't that awesome? So, yeah, we'll see if that's any good. And I think there's other, like, companion pieces to this book where it's, like, retellings of different tales. So I'll be interested to check that out. I mean, obviously, I'm interested to check all of these out, or I wouldn't have bought them, but you know what I'm saying. On a similar vein, I have the first Guardians of Ga'Hoole book here, The Captive by Kathryn Lasky. Again, I never read this series growing up. I know it's about a bunch of talking owls and there's like magic and stuff. I know Zack Snyder made a movie of it in like the mid 2000s that I heard was okay, but I haven't seen. Again, a lot of these children's series were kind of like not before my time, but they were kind of when I was transitioning more toward like adult literature. So I've missed out on a lot of these. But as I've said in my previous videos, I've enjoyed going back and re-exploring sort of these old children's books that I kind of missed out on. So I'll be interested to see how that is. My friend Nakia is really, really into this series, so I hope that I enjoy it. So yeah, that's that. Yeah. To sort of keep with the same theme here, this is Arthur, Book 1, The Seeing Stone by Kevin Crossley Holland. Not much to say about this. It's a retelling of the Arthur story. 13-year-old Arthur de Caldecott lives on a manor, desperately waiting for the moment he can become a knight. So it's not. So I guess it's not really a retelling of King Arthur. It's sort of about a kid who is named after King Arthur and sort of how he has to like live up to his namesake and stuff. And he meets like Merlin, and apparently there's like a bunch of different like Arthurs. There's like alternate dimensions and stuff or something. I don't know. It just sounded really interesting. And again, I love like any kind of retelling or anything like that. So I hope I enjoy that. And it's part of a whole series. I believe, yeah, it's the Arthur trilogy, so there's 2 more books in this series, so if I like it, I'll have a lot to read. And again, another sort of YA, sort of children's book. This is Challenger Deep by Neil Shusterman. It's about a high school student named Caden Bosch, and it's sort of, from what I understand, it's sort of these alternating storylines of Caden as sort of a normal high school student, and then Caden on a ship that's headed for the deepest point on Earth, which is Challenger Deep, the southern part of the Marianas Trench. So I think it has to do with like mental illness and like schizophrenia and stuff like that. And I believe this won or was nominated for the National Book Award, so I'm very interested to check that out. I've heard a little bit about Neil Shusterman. I know he wrote Scythe, which I also have, but I haven't read that. So I'll be interested to see how that turns out. Next I have Chocolat by Joanne Harris. Another thing that I've heard a lot about was turned into a famous movie with Johnny Depp. It's sort of a magical realism thing about a French town and someone who opens up a chocolatier shop, and her like candies have like sort of magical effects on the people who eat them. Sounds like kind of fable-like and fairy tale-esque and poetic, and I like that sort of stuff. Magical realism. So yeah, I hope it's good, and if I like it, maybe I'll check out the movie. We'll see. I have a Christopher Moore novel, The Serpent of Venice. I haven't read any Christopher Moore novels. I've got a couple of his books. I think I have A Dirty Job, and I think I have Lamb, and maybe I have You Suck, but I'll have to check. I know he's very sort of satirical, self-referential. A lot of his books make fun of like specific genres and tropes. Like I know this one takes place in Venice, and it's sort of like a Shakespeare parody. So that should be interesting. I'm not super well versed in Shakespeare, but I've heard a lot of good things about Christopher Moore, and I love that cover. That cover's beautiful. So a lot of these books I got just because I liked the cover. So. And then finally, I have We Were the Mulvaneys by Joyce Carol Oates. She's a famous, very, very prolific literary writer, writes in a lot of different veins. She writes realistic literary stuff. She's written horror, sort of suspense, all kinds of stuff. She's very, 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 very prolific, very, very varied in her writing style. I read her book, Zombie, which was inspired by Jeffrey Dahmer, which was a really creepy, disturbing book, but this is more of a family saga about the Mulvaneys. The Mulvaneys are blessed by all that makes life sweet: a hardworking father, a loving mother, 3 fine sons, and a bright, pretty daughter. And then something happens on Valentine's Day, 1976, which has tragic consequences. So I guess it's about the saga of this family and this event that sort of tears them apart and how it affects them. Seems very, very somber, very literary. But somebody on Juan from Plagued by Vision's Discord server heavily recommended this, and for $1, I mean, how could you go wrong? So I hope that's good, and hopefully I'll enjoy it. So yeah, that's everything that I got at this library book sale. 21 books here. Very varied things. I couldn't find a lot of vintage horror, which I was really disappointed about. That's what I was really looking for, but I mean, I don't think I can complain about a haul like this, can I? So, yeah. If you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought of them in the comments. Talk to me, get a dialogue going. That's what I love about BookTube. So, yeah, what do you think? Which one of these would you recommend that I start with? So, yeah, I hope to hear from you. And if you liked this video, like and subscribe and all that stuff. And I'll see you next time. Bye.